You're pretty smart, right? You know some stuff about true crime. You know when things seem off. So riddle me this. A guy calls the police at 11:30 in the morning. He says that someone kidnapped his girlfriend in the middle of the night, but he's only getting around to calling you now. He claims a bunch of guys broke into his house and kidnapped her, but he can't tell you who or why. He says they have guns with lasers on them. When pressed, this guy admits that he and his girlfriend recently had a major fight about his involvement with other women, but he swears he never hurt her. It was one of the mysterious intruders. If you're rolling your eyes at the ceiling right now and thinking, okay, liar, you're thinking like a cop. And the cops in this case were terribly, horribly wrong. Aaron Quinn had just had a difficult and complicated breakup with his fiancée when he met a new woman, Denise Huskins. The two hit it off and began to date steadily, but when Aaron started mulling over whether or not to get back with his former fiancée, Denise discovered the text messages between the former lovers. She accused Aaron of cheating on her, though in reality he had only been texting his ex, and she told him that he had a choice to make. But on March 22, 2015, the two of them went to his home and hashed it out over pizza, eventually coming to the conclusion that they would commit to each other and work to reestablish trust. They went to bed together around midnight, having decided to make the relationship stick. At 3 a.m., intruders broke into the house. According to Denise and Aaron, there were at least two of them.
We said, I'm going to leave some ties at the edge of the bed. You're going to tie his hands behind his back and his feet together. And I was shaking, and he was encouraging me, saying, you're doing a good job.
The intruders covered Denise and Aaron's eyes with swimming goggles covered in duct tape, which blocked their sight. They then placed headphones on the victims with pre-recorded messages giving them further instructions. The recording called Aaron by name.
It became clear that this attack was not random.
One of the first things he said to me when they separated us was that he gave my parents' address where I grew up. He knew all my bank account records. This was stuff, so as it kept on going, you could tell that this was planned.
Strangely enough, the recording also referred to Aaron's former fiancée who had lived in the house with him until recently. Clearly, the advanced planning had called for a different woman in the house. Though when intruders found out that Denise was also an attractive blonde woman, they threw her in the trunk of their car anyway. Aaron was left in the home, but left in front of a video camera. He was told he was being watched and that he wasn't allowed to leave the video frame. Then his ankles were duct taped and the intruders gave him a phone. They told him that they would communicate with him via text and email, but that he wasn't to call the police.
Tells me I need to stay there till the morning. I have to call in sick to work, and they had given me Denise's passcode to her phone. I need to text her boss and tell him that she had a family emergency, was going to be gone for the week.
Aaron was also instructed to hold on to the phone and expect ransom demands. If Aaron disobeyed orders, the intruder said, Denise would be killed. Then the intruders forced Aaron to drink a sedative and he passed out. When Aaron awoke, it was because his alarm clock was blaring. He managed to stay awake long enough to call in sick to work as per his instructions. Then he passed out again. When Aaron woke up for a second time, it was 11:30 a.m. He had new text from the intruder demanding two payments of $8,500. Aaron responded to the kidnapper's message but didn't get a response. He began to panic. Perhaps he had been unconscious for too long and Denise was being hurt. Because he was under orders not to call the police and believed he was under video surveillance, Aaron called his brother, an FBI agent. His brother advised Aaron to immediately call the cops. Terrified that he was endangering Denise's life, he did so. When officers from the Vallejo Police Department arrived at Aaron's house, it had been more than 9 hours since Denise had been kidnapped. They quickly unplugged the camera, but were immediately suspicious of Aaron's outlandish story. First question that they asked him was whether he was on drugs, which is just rude in my opinion. I mean, I get it, but at least ask him if he wants the duct tape taken off his ankles first, maybe, or a glass of water, and then start accusing him of getting high. I mean, there's such a thing as manners, honestly. As getting established earlier, we have to be fair to the police and point out that Aaron Quinn's story did sound fishy as hell. It's exactly the sort of story that a psychopath would make up after killing his girlfriend and trying to cover his tracks. But Denise Huskins was missing, and the police were so convinced that Aaron was guilty that they didn't even try to find her. They just kept trying to convince Aaron to confess to her murder.
I'm telling you, it did not happen the way that you're describing it. It did not. Period.
I didn't hurt her. I didn't do any of that.
At one point, police gave Aaron a polygraph, which they told him he failed. Whether or not this is actually true is unclear. Police also accused Aaron of pushing Denise down the stairs and killing her.
At one point, I actually started doubting my own sanity. And I thought maybe I did have a schizophrenic breakdown.
One day after Denise had been kidnapped, and after police spent 18 hours interrogating Aaron, proof of life recording was sent to San Francisco Chronicle. Denise Huskins was alive and being held captive.
My name's Denise Huskins. I'm kidnapped. Otherwise, fine.
Police were still skeptical, but they brought Aaron back to the station and told him to get in contact with the kidnappers. When Aaron was given back his cell phone, he realized the police had put it in airplane mode, even though they had been told it was the only link to the kidnappers. When the airplane mode was turned off, the phone was flooded with messages. The kidnappers had been trying to get in touch with Aaron and nobody had responded. Aaron was terrified that Denise had been killed in the meantime. Police still insisted that there were no kidnappers. One day later, Denise Huskins reappeared, dazed and physically battered. She was dumped out of a van 400 miles south of where she had been kidnapped onto the street of her childhood home. She made it to a phone and called the police, explaining that she had been abducted. At first, she did not tell the police that she had been raped. Her assailant had told her that two things had to remain a secret: that he had been in the military and that he had assaulted her. If she told anyone, he warned her, he would harm her family. Back in Vallejo, when police found out that their murder victim was alive, well, and corroborating her husband's story, they quickly pivoted. Instead of saying that they were wrong and further investigating the crime, they had a new theory, that the whole thing was a hoax. When Denise finally revealed to her lawyer that she had been raped and that her attacker was former military, police jumped on the fact that she had, quote, changed her story. And sure, at first I thought this was kind of weird too, but then I thought about it. Those are the two details that might help the police identify the guy, and wouldn't it make sense that her attacker would threaten Denise to make her keep quiet about those two specific details? Anyway, police had told the couple that whichever one confessed to the crime would be offered immunity. Then they told the public that the whole thing was a hoax.
Mr. Quinn and Ms. Huskins has plundered valuable resources away from our community and has taken the focus away from the true victims of our community while instilling fear amongst our community members. So if anything, it is Mr. Quinn and Ms. Huskins that owes this community an apology.
This whole thing was exacerbated by the fact that the movie Gone Girl had just come out. The idea of a real-life version of that movie where a woman fakes her own disappearance to get back at a cheating husband just thrilled everybody. Here's the weirdest part of the story. When Denise and Aaron were being hounded by the police and abused in the media and online, one of her abductors sent a series of rambling emails to the San Francisco Chronicle defending Denise's honor. The writer claimed to be part of the gang of gentlemen criminals. We are young adults, fairly recent college graduates, and up until now, this was a bit like a game or movie adventure. We fancied ourselves a sort of Ocean's 11 gentlemen criminals who only took stuff that was insured from people who could afford it. The horrifying reality of what we had become and what we were doing until we were confronted with Denise's suffering and humanity. The letter writer was upset that the police didn't believe Denise, saying, "Denise was absolutely kidnapped. We did it. We would rather take the chance of revealing the truth than live in a world where someone like Denise is victimized again." In spite of these letters, police persisted in believing that there was no kidnapper. Perhaps they had even believed that Denise was writing the letters herself. At a certain point, it's like, come on guys. Are police even allowed to be conspiracy nuts? Isn't there some kind of like follow every lead rule? Whatever. Denise Huskins might have gone the rest of her life being called the real-life Gone Girl, but then one of her abductors decided to strike again. 3 months after Denise was found, there was a similar home invasion in Dublin, California. A couple was awakened and told to tie each other up, but the wife managed to escape and call 911 while her husband fought off the attacker. The suspect fled but left his cell phone behind him. Police traced the cell to the home of Matthew Muller, a Harvard-educated former attorney. Muller was also a former Marine, and in his possession was a water gun with a laser attached to it, which in a dark bedroom would have looked like a real gun. Muller also had zip ties, a pair of two-way radios, and goggles covered in tape. One pair of goggles had a long blonde hair attached to it. That hair belonged to Denise Huskins. Matthew Muller was arrested and charged with Denise's kidnapping. Finally, the police were forced to believe that the kidnapping had really happened. Denise and Aaron still insist that there were multiple intruders in their home that night, but in spite of what Matthew Muller wrote in those letters to the Chronicle, he now claims that he acted alone. He also claims that he suffers from bipolar disorder and claims that the condition is part on his actions. Muller pled guilty to Denise's kidnapping and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Denise Huskins and Aaron Quinn were finally vindicated. In March 2016, the couple filed a suit against the Vallejo Police Department, accusing the department of defamation, false arrest, and false imprisonment, and the intentional infliction of emotional distress. They settled out of court for $2.5 million, though part of that settlement is that the Vallejo police admitted no wrongdoing. Aaron Quinn and Denise Huskins were married in 2018, and they now have a daughter together. The Vallejo Police Department had one final chance to do their jobs, by apologizing to Denise and Aaron for dragging them through hell. In this instance, the police did finally step up and do the right thing. They issued a public apology in 2021. 6 years later, and only after the department changed leadership. Wow. Thanks for watching Beyond Crime. If you enjoyed this episode and want to support more true crime content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. And hey, next time you think the boyfriend is acting super sketchy, remember, sometimes life is just weird.